Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me make sure my volume is okay. Guys, I've been having a conversation in email with Abby Martin. I'm trying to get her to come on to the show. So she seems receptive, so I'm hoping that's a yes. And the moment that I get a yes, you guys will be the second to know. My wife comes first. Do you remember this? You may not remember this. I always just like saying, do you remember this? Not necessarily because you remember it, but just because I want to tell you something that you might not have seen before.
The Democratic Party is in a moment of questioning about its identity. You were reelected to lead the Democrats in the House. What do you tell Democrats who want a new direction? And then go to you, what are you going to do differently?
Well, I don't think that people want a new direction. Our values unify us, and our values are about supporting America's working families. That is one that everyone is in agreement on. What we want is a better connection of our message to working families in our country, and that clearly in the election showed that message wasn't coming through.
He asked her a straight question. You guys lost magnificently. The depths of your failure and your loss I've never before quantified. If I compared the depths of your failure and the depths of your loss in a political context, if I compared it to a black hole, if I compared it to the awesomeness of the galaxy itself, it would still be inadequate to get to the degree of your failure and your losses. You've lost 1,100 seats throughout the United States. You've lost the House, the Senate, you've lost the Supreme Court, a seat that you guys were supposed to get, and you lost the presidency to a reality show host. That fired other has-been celebrities. It must hurt. It must burn. So tell me, Ms. Pelosi, you, as being the minority leader of the House, what do you believe you need to change? I believe we just need to communicate our message better. That is literally what she said. I believe we need to communicate our message better. Our values unify us. Nobody knows what those values are. Our values unify us. You can call them values, but it's not necessarily in line with what the American public wants. And the idea, like they use this term values as if everybody knows what this means. I have no idea what your values are. I have no idea what the Democratic Party values are. He's asking you, what do you need to change? You failed at a magnificent level. You've handed us over to complete maniacs. And he's asking you, what do you need to change? And your response is nothing. Nothing. That's Miss Pelosi. Nothing needs to change. We're fine just ticking along the way we are. Failures and losers at that. Nothing needs to change. We just need to get better at messaging. We need to communicate better in this way. That's an amazing statement that we don't need to change after failing so much. We just need to change how we get across, essentially, our public relations, not the reality. Within the context of a person that would say something like that after failing to that degree, we have Democrats' new public relations thing. Hope and change has expired. That has gone to bitter disillusionment, and you can say status quo bitterness, or bitterness at the status quo. And they've gone to a better deal. Better deal. For some reason, I feel like that's the way you have to say it. A better deal. A better deal. I don't know why in my head. That's why you have to say it that way. I have a few questions. First, why do we need a better deal? You guys had the House, you guys had the Senate, a supermajority in the Senate, at least for a short period of time, and you had the presidency. Why on earth do you need a better deal? What were your values at the point where you took office in that way? And why on earth did you lose 20 or 30% of the party, meaning the people who voted for Obama? Why did you lose that many people? Why did that many people bleed themselves off in the 8 years that Obama was in office? What I'm asking you is, why do you need a better deal? What were your values when you got elected? And why didn't these quote unquote values lead you to have these things expressed in your legislation during that time period? What I would say is, this is kind of like a person loses their job and then calls in to pay a bill. Hey, I've just lost my job, but I'm now trying to square up with this bill. I just want a payment arrangement once I get a job back. That's kind of what this is like. A better deal. And I'm asking, why do you need a better deal? If your values, as Nancy Pelosi, if we're unified by our values, why didn't your values unify you to do things that would have headed off the idea of a Donald Trump getting elected, because those people would have had a little bit more belief in who you actually represented? And unfortunately, when I say that, I'm saying that from the perspective of somebody who's realizing that the Democratic Party no longer represents their interests. Look, I'm trying to get at a particular point. I'm going to use Obamacare because I don't really care what you tell me. I'm looking at your works. What do you do? What do you do? You pass Obamacare. It doesn't do anything to deal with drug costs. And for the most part, it's this utopian idea that the health insurance companies can still make massive amounts of profits off the backs of working class and people who don't really need those health insurance companies. Medicare can do it all. And that you can still keep the public, or the public interest can be served while keeping medical companies in the process, or insurance companies. This was utopian, and this is found to be demonstrably false. Rates have been increasing, and I understand that Republicans have had some part in rates increasing, but those rates were increasing beforehand. It doesn't work. You need something, a public option. And Obama did talk about a public option at the time, but he scuttled the public option once he became president. I'm making the point to you that if you ask me, what do you represent? And I look for your values and I try to figure out what your values are. And I see Obamacare, and I see a president that is bending over backwards to make sure Medicare can't necessarily negotiate with drug companies, and is bending over backwards to keep insurance companies, these predatory, non-necessary entities that essentially just money changers, into the insurance process, allowing them to reap massive benefits off the public. Who do you represent? Do you represent corporate interests where you believe those things need to be a part of the process, or do you represent the public that put you in that office? If you're going to do something about healthcare, do something about healthcare. Is it going to be about the public, or is it going to be about people making profit? I'm making a point to you that Obamacare, the platypus, this utopian idea of incrementalism from the standpoint of healthcare, is exactly what the Democratic Party represents. This utopian belief that somehow corporate America and the working class can work in this kind of kumbaya relationship, and both of these things can exist in the party. No, one party gets shafted. If healthcare is about the human being, then healthcare should be about the human being, and should make healthcare about the person. Meaning, Obamacare should not have bent over backwards to making sure the insurance companies could stay in the process, nor should have bent over backwards to ensure the profits of drug companies will be insured. It should have been about human beings. I'm making the point that that's the distinction. That's the difference. What the Democratic Party represents is essentially the way that Obamacare was handed out, or that Obamacare was worked out. This idea of corporate interests, making sure corporate interest is ensured, even at the expense of the human being that's in the process. That's what the Democratic Party represents. Those are Democratic Party values. Yes, it's a certain amount of incrementalism from the standpoint of healthcare, but no, it's not to the degree what it needs to actually work. Half-assing it. Fence sitting. The other question I have to this is, why? No, the other question I have to this is, can you trust this process? Understand, you just heard Nancy Pelosi saying, we don't need to change squat. We just need to have a better message. In addition to Nancy Pelosi saying we don't need to change squat, they've taken on this idea that if they scream Trump loud enough and only focus on Donald Trump, that for the most part, they can scare the shit out of people to get those people to come back to vote for them. This idea of a blue wave. The idea of a blue wave doesn't take this fully into account. Meaning, it's not about what they're promising you. It's not about what they're going to do. The better deal is essentially a cornucopia of ideas that they put out and put on the table saying that we're going to do all of these things. But can you trust that they're going to do all these things? In fact, let's go through a few of them just so you can see what I'm talking about. Lower prescription drug costs, raise wages, a better deal for teachers and students, fixing our broken political system and returning to a government of and by and for the people, public housing, ladder of opportunity for American families, tools to succeed in 21st century, rebuilding American infrastructure, save our pensions, give workers the freedom to negotiate a better deal, universal high speed, passive childhood for working families, crack down on corporate monopolies and abuse of public. Look, the point I'm getting at is, I'm pretty sure one of these says something about ponies. You have a list of things that you write. Hey, where do we believe the pulse of the nation is? And you're going to write that stuff down. But why would anybody in their right mind believe that the Democratic Party is going to fight for these things when you had the opportunity to fight for these things, you did not fight for those things? Why do you have to fail so miserably and completely to get to the point of saying, hey, maybe the public doesn't quite like what we're putting out? And who were you representing prior at that point? Yes, I'm pointing to the fact that when they were in office before, these were not things that were on their agenda. And yet they're continuously talking about their values. If these were their values, these things would have been espoused in the legislations that they were trying to pass, not the platypus of Obamacare. That's the point I'm trying to get at. Do you trust that they're going to actually push for these things? What's in a Democratic platform? And do they push for the items in the platform, or are those just a wish list of things that they push down? Do you believe that they're going to push for them? Keep in mind, this is the same party that's been going through the country, putting their thumb on the scale in one election after the next to push their particular point of view. Oftentimes, these corporatists, hacks, or these millionaires or plutocrats who are in the party or who are accumulating and sucking up money in order to run in these races. Do you honestly believe that people who spend 75% of their time begging for money is going to somehow turn over a new leaf and implement all of these things? You can't have it both ways. You can't have this thing where you're accepting all of this cash and all of this money, you're greasing yourself up in money for corporate interests, but you're not necessarily being attentive to the needs of that same corporate interest. You can't have it both ways. These are the same people that cheated Sanders, while at the same token lying about it all the way through, saying, there's nothing to see here, folks. You guys are sore losers. These are the exact same people. Do you trust this process? Do you remember the political ad of Hope and Change? This advertisement, it's like wearing a pair of blue jeans by Levi's. In this case, you had Obama. Did Obama deliver hope and change? That answer, of course, is no. I'm making a point that they can promise whatever they want in the off season. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. What it comes down is brass tacks. What do you believe in? And based on what you believe in, that's what I believe personally that you are going to try to implement when you get into that office. And I in no way believe that you believe in any of this. If so, you would have implemented the last time around. And by the way, this is the same party that instituted the Russiagate stuff, that was talking about using Donald Trump and Russia, essentially, or Trump to slay Russia going back to 2015. This is the same party that screamed it at the top of their lungs as opposed to dealing with any of the real issues of dealing with the American public. Do you trust this party to do these things? And if so, I have to ask why. And what are you using to base that trust on? I don't see it. The last point I want to get at this is ultimately a conversation between plutocrats and everybody else. The Democratic Party at some point made the decision that they wanted to essentially represent the top 10%. So when they say a better deal, yes, as the Republican Party represents the top 1%, these guys represent the top 10%. Technically, if you give me $2, I am $2 better off than what I was. But this is one of the most imaginative, radical, incrementalist plans that I think I've come across in politics. And they're putting this out as if this is a major thing. This is a conversation between plutocrats versus everyone else. I've made that point before, and I stick by that point because I think that's essentially what takes place. I think the Democratic Party goes to their donors and say, in order to get elected, we are going to have to do X. The donor either gives them cash or it doesn't give them cash. But there are certain bright red lines that these guys are not going to go based on whether or not they're going to get the funding that they're going to get. Klobuchar comes on and tells these people to shut up talking about class. Shut up. I don't want to hear you talk about class. Well, that's a red line, meaning the whole idea of economic concerns becomes subordinate to this guy. This guy is telling them that he's going to shut his wallet if they bring up this idea of class. What if class is the thing that needs to be brought up? And if you're talking about a better deal and you're not talking about this kind of economic prosperity or this kind of economic rejuvenation or some kind of radical approach to economics, or at the very least radical from the standpoint of what they're doing, then you're not saying anything. You're not saying anything. Unless these guys are willing to go after their donors, they're not saying squat. This is not something that you can trust. At some point, a plutocrat may say, okay, fair enough. If you got to support Medicare for all, fair enough, you still get my money, in which case these guys will push Medicare for all, knowing that they have the backing of whoever is pushing them. I would be extremely skeptical of the party that's out of power and the party that's willing to promise pretty much any and everything to get back into power. And that's essentially what these guys are doing. I don't believe this at all. You have all of these lefties throughout the country who are actually trying to change the system, meaning grassroots funding, literally trying to go back to their districts and trying to run in the campaigns. And the Democratic Party is literally taking their point of view. No, we don't like you. In some cases, telling people to get out of the race. In many of the cases, they're calling people up and asking them how much money they can raise. I did a story the other day, asking a person whether they can raise $300,000 or $500,000 within a short period of time in order to run in the race, using that as their benchmark for who runs. If your benchmark is always just based on the bottom dollar and the bottom line, you're going to get a certain type and caliber of people that runs, either people who are obsequious to the wealth of the people that essentially are paying them, or people who themselves are independently wealthy. In either case, neither one of those people represents the grassroots interests that we are trying to push, let's say it that way, or from our standpoint, that we want to push into the political system. They can't deliver on what they're pushing. That's my point. That's my point. And just one last point. I want to show you the amazing incrementalism at work, that they're acting as if it's a big plan. Create 10 million new jobs. This is pulled out of the air. So that's the first point. Millions of Americans, especially those without a college degree, are searching for a path for a good job that will provide them for families. Today, we pledge to fight good paying jobs, promising a future for 10 million Americans. Better deal. Okay. First, we're creating new jobs that help millions to get back in the workforce through a bold, innovative agenda that invests in all aspects of the American economy. Essentially, we're going to give companies money. We're going to give companies more money. Second, we must ensure that American workers have access to tools they need to fill their jobs in the 21st century. It's far too common that Americans who are eager to work are left behind because they don't have the skills necessary to compete in changing economy. Let's see. In order to connect millions of workers with good-paying jobs, millions of good-paying, high-growth jobs, and to close the jobs and skills gap, we propose a better deal that will expand registered apprenticeships, create tax credit to employers, create a network of thousands of partnerships. All of this stuff is stuff that fundamentally has, for the most part, been done before. Why do you need a new deal? And why are you continuously just giving corporations money as your approach to trying to create jobs? This looks like a Republican Party plan. This is kind of my point. This is neoliberalism at work. This idea of markets being the only solution to a particular problem. Hey, wouldn't it be cheaper to just have a federal jobs guarantee? All of this money that you're talking about giving away in tax credits, all of this money that states give away to all of these different jobs in order to be at their places. You have one job, or one company that said they were going to take all the taxes that the workers were going to get and just give it to the employer itself. Instead of doing all of that, why not just create the jobs yourself? There's a novel idea. You do two things. You say, I'm going to create a federal jobs guarantee, and in creating a federal jobs guarantee, I'm going to set it at $15 an hour. I don't have to change legislation for the minimum wage because I'm setting it at $15 an hour. And if another company is going to have less than that, those companies are going to lose their workers to essentially the federal government. And you use those people to build all sorts of things, be it infrastructure, to make sure people have quality food. There's so many things that you can use this for. You can call it an army if you want, or better yet, an army from the standpoint of the America itself, meaning in the same way that you have military operations, you have these operations that take place in the country, building the infrastructure and making sure people have access to the things that they need. But no, we have classic incrementalism that's put off as if it's some big major program. It's not a big major program. It's the same old that Democrats have always pushed, and the same old stuff that they've always espoused. So I'll leave it at that. This one went too long. A better slogan, better platitudes, better corporations, terrible pizza. When you take your slogan from the worst pizza company, what do you expect? Oh, that is Papa John's. You're right. That is Papa John's. You're absolutely right. Luco Clemente, Bob, Jamal has start on your party platform. Jamal has a head start on your party platform. Trudy, same as when they bailed out the banks instead of homeowners. Yeah, you know what's wild about that, Trudy? African Americans. So for all the support that they give Democrats and they give Obama, his policy with regards to homeowners, letting those homeowners go bust, dramatically gutted black wealth. African Americans, most of their wealth was held into their homes. When those homes went belly up, their wealth went belly up with it. He let homeowners down, while at the same token protecting Wall Street. Yeah, agreed. Nancy Pelosi, Jaluka, quit attributing progressive voices' intellectual achievements to Jamal. Those are not his achievements. Those are my achievements. I don't know what he's been saying about me, but those are my achievements. Piano Man, she's worth over $100 million like most of the senators. These are public servants, for Christ's sake. $100 million. With $100 million, what point of view do you think you can espouse? I mean, honestly, the overwhelming majority, like, not the overwhelming, but half of the people in this country are either poor or low wage. Nancy Pelosi, with $100 million, how on earth can she adequately reflect what's taking place from the standpoint of the experience of the average person in this country? It is a shame that any one person has $100 million by itself, let alone that person is representing somebody in the public spotlight. Yeah, that's sad. We've been completely co-opted from the standpoint of corporate America. She has $100 million and is serving in that office. Her husband is a billionaire. That's amazing. Christian Zaldivar, you ask for hand and they give you an ass hair. Is that what happens? They give you an ass hair. George Pagad, go Greens, vote for your views, not for the lesser evil. That I agree with. Vote for the person who represents your interests. They're going to push whatever they need to push to try to get those people on. I've said before, Bernie Sanders has allowed the Democratic Party to be better liars. That's what this seems to boil down to. They've become better liars. What do the public want? Give them a taste of what the public wants with nobody really having to push or represent the stuff. This is just, better deal. What does this mean? Does each and every Democrat toe this particular narrative? What about Joe Manchin, who voted with Donald Trump like 60 or 70% of the time? Is he also pushing for a better deal? Like, this is nonsense. This is utter nonsense. By claiming those achievements as your own, you have now become a pleasurist as opposed to simply a mimic unsubbing. Oh, Jesus Christ. Mike Sarvis, we still see through it. A better deal for who? A better deal for who? It's always the lesser evil in this country, the red wabbit. Well, it's lesser evil because we settle for the lesser evil. Let them lose. Like, the only reason that they're pushing this, understand, they're pushing this because they believe that the pulse of the nation is further to the left. And like Nancy Pelosi said in this clip, I'll let her say it again. Yeah, I'll let her say it again.
It's interesting to see if President Trump will go along with
What
that.
about Obamacare? He wants to take that on right away.
And seniors should know how it affects them because of Medicare in that. All of that close the donut hole, which increase the have a lot to lose, both in the voucherizing of Medicare, what it wants to do for the Affordable Care Act.
The Democratic Party is in a moment of questioning about its identity. You were reelected to lead the Democrats in the House. What do you tell Democrats who want a new direction and then go to you? What are you going to do differently?
Well, I don't think that people want a new direction.
The fact that woman starts off her sentence saying, I don't think people want a new direction, and Donald Trump is in the goddamn White House. Nancy Pelosi needs to retire. This has nothing to do with her age. I'm not calling her senile, nothing like that. But if you are that demonstrably out of sorts, where you don't necessarily understand that the reason why people put Trump in that office is because they wanted something fundamentally different than what they were getting. It's not that they loved Trump. They looked at the establishment candidate and said no. It was a no vote. It was a no vote. And you ask Nancy Pelosi, what do they need to do? And they say, we need to lie better. We need to lie better. Balthazar, how dare Bernie live in a $3 million house? He doesn't. That's disgraceful. Nancy Pelosi has a $15 million vineyard, a $7.5 million San Francisco house, a $3.5 million DC apartment. It is beneath him to live in such squalor. Chuck the Schumer. Jesus Christ. So much money. Bold like a leopard. Jamal, Rand Paul, 2020, time to mow the grass. Hey, your buddy Rand Paul voted in Mike Pompeo, who's looking at Iran. That is a dramatic failure. That is a dramatic failure. He needs to answer for that shit. I mean, if you're talking from the standpoint of a libertarian and they're looking at Mike Pompeo and he's saying, yes, I want Mike Pompeo for Secretary of State. And Mike Pompeo's had a hard on for God knows how long from the standpoint of hitting Iran. Oh, he loses points. He loses points. Chuck the Schmuck. Corporate Chuck. Bashar al-Assad. She's not just a capitalist. She's a committed capitalist. Oh, yeah, I had that video tuned up too. Rand Paul is a real puppet master. Hey, look, Rand Paul really caved in on Pompeo. Yes, he did cave on Pompeo. Yes, he did. I worry far more about the fools who did vote for Hillary. Those scary people are walking around loose. Oh, that's hilarious. Bold like a leopard. Jamal, Pompeo body mass 4 times as much as Rand. He probably threatened him with a chocolate swirly. He didn't threaten Rand Paul with a chocolate swirly. Rand Paul's value system just fell apart under the political pressure. That's what happened. He just crumbled under the spotlight. He said Donald Trump gave him a call. They asked him, they said, did he give you any assurances? He's like, no, he did not. No, he did not. After 40 years of service, still not a millionaire. Then you're not doing something right, Trudy. You better grow up and sell out. Yeah, man. We need a political change in this country. And voting for the lesser evil is not working. That is not working. If you believe that's working, you're not paying attention. And the idea that Nancy Pelosi, Democrats lose the 1,100 seats. They lose the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court. And they lose the presidency to a reality show host, essentially a guy that we're firing has been celebrities. And she looks at all of this level of failure. She looks at the bottom of the well. She looks into the void. And she says, I don't think anything needs to change. We just need to get better at messaging our values. Completely missing the fact that the reason why they fail so much is because people do have an idea of what their values are. And they realize that those values don't necessarily represent their interests. So you've had workers peel away, millennials peel away, African Americans peel away. And now they have a better deal. So let's see if people are receptive. Look, most people, I don't think, read the media in the way they read the media. Like, I don't think they inhale this stuff. I think they may get bits and fragments. They hear Democrats say better deal. They hear them say this or that. But the question becomes, do people actually believe it? And I have to be honest, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I think they're going to push this better deal and ignore it tomorrow. They're not going to push this stuff. Who's going to do it? I have a question. Are you for Medicare for all? Yes or no? Are you for universal health care? Those are slightly different. Yes or no? Are you for any and everybody being able to go to college? Or at the very least some kind of community college or state-funded community college? Yes or no? I'm asking you things from the standpoint of specific individual policies that a lot of lefties will get behind. You have a list. I understand you have a list. I'm talking about something that's more clean-cut and snapshot for the American public to understand, as opposed to this idea of just a better deal. A better deal. Personally, I think this is an advertisement, but we'll see. They're talking about this blue wave. I think they're going to do and say whatever they need to say to try to get into that office. No, I don't believe this. I think this is nonsense. Debbie's now working on one of PV sweatshops. That's what I heard. She's wearing, she's sewing a TYT logo. She is not. I saw a video Debbie did yesterday. I think it was on Facebook. God bless George W. Bush Pooker Swelter 2028. Oh, Jesus Christ. The Democratic Party has a problem. And part of that problem has to do with they've allowed all of these edifices that got them elected to be gutted. They allowed the black vote to be undermined in many of these states. Even Gore, when Gore lost that election, there were hundreds of thousands of African American votes that were wiped away that Democrats wouldn't necessarily stand up for. You have this voter registration in many of these states. You have them attacking unions. One thing after the next, they've let fall away. Even the Electoral College, as opposed to try to challenge that, left that intact. And they're shocked why they lose. I mean, all of these things, it's as if they just expect to get the win. And I don't necessarily know why they expect to get the win. The question becomes, what takes place during the blue wave? That's honestly what's the question. In 2018, what takes place? Are they able to take back their seats? And if they are able to take back their seats, what happens? I think this is going to be brushed to the wayside if they can take back their seats, because they would have been able to take back their seats under the modus operandi that Donald Trump is a threat, Donald Trump is eating babies, and that he is the thing that you need to focus your attention on, not necessarily them. That is not the scenario that you want to let them win under. So I'll leave it at that. Chrome notified me this after 3 minutes. Firefox just now. Cool. Democrats are going to blow through a brown stench. Oh, that's nasty. Forget blue wave. Democrats are going through a brown stench. The system is set up so that you cannot do anything against money. Yes and no. They choose to do that. That's not forced. I mean, they've accepted this paradigm that money forces their hand, meaning like 75% of the time. Representative Jolly, he was a Republican, came up saying he was shocked to find out that the majority of his time was spent begging for money. It's like 2/3 of their day is spent on the phone trying to get money, trying to get cash. If that's your world, like, this is not necessarily because they're bad people. If that's your world, who are you talking to? Who are you responding to? Who are you engaging with in order to get the money for your campaign? You're engaging with these people constantly. It would be odd for you to have this many conversations with people to try to get money out of them and yet ignore them completely. That would be very bizarre. I mean, it makes all the human sense in the world that they would be receptive to to essentially the people who are giving them this cash. I guess my point is that hasn't changed. And if that hasn't changed, how on earth is Nancy Pelosi trying to get people to believe that this stuff is going to change? It's not. They're like used car salesmen trying to sell you a 1965 Mustang with only 5,000 original miles. Right. It's like they try to act as if we weren't here in 2008, that the hope and change thing never took place, that all of the opportunities that they had at their disposal were squandered one after the next. When they had one big chance to pass a big program, they ended up passing Obamacare, and Obamacare rates went through the roof only a few years after they passed it. Their record is not good. I mean, even if you want to go back to Bill Clinton, that record is not good. Their record is not good at all. And now they're saying, look, we're going to give you something different. And ultimately, the different thing that they're talking about is radical incrementalism. It is time for something different. And supporting these guys when it's time for something different is not going to get you there. This is status quo. This is just status quo and a slightly different contortion than what it was prior. That's all it is. And you have to trust, completely trust, that the members, the individual members of the Democratic Party, like Doug Jones and Joe Manchin, Heitkamp, these right-wingers are going to somehow go along with a plan that's to the left. Joe Manchin voted with Donald Trump like 60-something% of the time. This is something that they're putting up as a wish list. I believe it when I see it. Right now, I don't believe squat. I believe what Nancy Pelosi saying, that they don't need to change anything. I believe what Nancy Pelosi said when she was talking about those people are going to come right back around in 2 years to vote them in office. They're thinking that this is just going to be this kind of political season where Republicans come in, Democrats go in, Republicans go in, Democrats come in. That may be true. That may be true, but I don't know. So I'm going to end this. Thank you guys for showing up. I have another video after this. I may cut this video just because I want to cut down on the number of minutes just for the audience part, but you guys would have been here for the entirety of the show. So thank you guys for showing up. Calls. Maybe on the next one, Bold Like a Leopard. Maybe the next one, because this one is gone already too long. So I'm going to end this one here, and I will see you guys in about 10-15 minutes. Thanks, guys.